Welcome to MainFrame Mentally. Subscribe to our channel to learn more about psychology. My teammates and I are going to be uploading 6 different videos. In each of the videos, we're going to be covering one chapter.
Zimari Ariola here, doing chapter 1, Introduction to Psychology.
My name is Philip, and I will be presenting on research method.
I'm going to be covering chapter 3, the biological foundations of behavior.
Hi guys, my name is Jelly Jillet, and today I will be focusing on chapter 4, Nature versus Nurture.
I'm Hayward, and I'm going to be covering chapter 5, Sensation and Perception.
My name is Kimar Sima, and I am doing State of Consciousness.
Okay, so today is Zimari Ariola here. We'll be teaching you guys on the chapter 1, Introduction to Psychology. So we're going to start off with basics, right? When you hear the word psychology, what comes to mind? When you hear the word psychology, psychology, many people would say the brain, the way how people think, and several others. People would say psychopaths. And yes, psychopaths, when people study psychopaths, they study the way how they think and stuff like that, right? So now we're going into the content of what we're going to be covering in this video. So in this video, we're going to cover the definition of psychology, the goals of psychology, the founding of psychology, and basic versus applied psychology. So now we're going to talk about the definition of psychology, right? And many people, when they heard the word psychology, they thought about mind. So you guys were correct, right? So the definition of psychology is psych meaning mind, logo meaning the study of, and then psychology in a whole is the science of behaviors and mental processes. The science meaning the approach to knowledge based on the systematic observation. The behavior is the direct observable and measurable action. And then the mental processes is a private and psychological activity that includes thinking, perceiving, and feelings. So now we're going to move on to the goals of psychology, right? When we heard the word goals, we thought about the aim, or what they aim to do, or what the psychologists wanted to do. So the goals of psychology is to describe the behavior, describe the mental, describe, predict, understand, and influence. So describe meaning explaining what the different behaviors are, the different mental processes, and they describe it accurately. To predict is for example, we have the developed test, right? It's enabled employers to predict more accurately which job applicants will perform their job well. So in order to predict that, they thought about psychology also. And then we come to understanding, in other words, explanation of the truth, right? And then the influence is just influence. Think about your friends, right? When you think about your friends, they influence. Sometimes we have peer pressure. Peer pressure influence you to do certain things that you don't want to do, or your parents will not allow you to do it. So that is what influence means. So those are the goals: describe, predict, and understand, and influence. And now we move on to the founding science of psychology. This was established first in a laboratory in Leipzig, in Germany in 1879 by William Wundt. As you can see right here, this man right here, he is William Wundt. He discovered psychology, and he did it in a laboratory at the Harvard University in he was also working along William James, which was at the Harvard University in 1875. However, the founding of this science, psychology, is credited to many groups of scientists, those who interested in the different fields laid the foundation of psychology, right? The science psychology. So as with any other field in psychology, was developed as a result of several events. These are key events that are important in the development of social psychology as we know as it today. These events all had focus in the areas of the scientific method, the physiological thoughts, hypnosis, natural selection, adaptation, and genetics, right? So now we're going to move on to we're going deeper into the history of psychology, right? The term psychology did not exist before 1879, and then it was in the year that William Wundt would establish the first experimental psychology lab in the University of Leipzig in Germany. The goal was to explore the components of the conscious mind and those elements are organized. The first areas of psychology to be explored were the structuralism, and which also lead into the Gestalt Psychology, functionalism, behaviorism, and psychotherapy. So now we're going deeper into structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism, and psychotherapy, right? So structuralism is the nature of the conscious experience, right? When you think about conscious experience, you think about things that is going on around you. Like right now, I am explaining to you guys what is structuralism. I know that. So, and you know that you're watching this video, so that is what is happening around you. So William Wundt, he was born in 1813 to 19. He died in 1920, and then Edward Tinacher was born in 1867 and died in 1927. They wanted to identify the basic elements of experience and how those elements are organized. The first topic of this study by psychologists was a private conscious experience, right? So what is a private conscious experience? That is everything that you are aware of at that moment. Like I said, the nature of the conscious experience, right? So structuralism describes the different elements of the conscious experience and how the elements are organized. So that is structuralism. Remember, the different elements and how these elements are organized, they describe that. And J.V. Henry Alston also studied the conscious experience, and it is recognized for his study of sensation and heat and cold. That's why people know what is the different from cold and what is different from heat. So now we move on to the Gestalt Psychology. Like I said, the structuralism and the Gestalt Psychology, they are connected. So the Gestalt Psychology was based on the German concept of Gestalt or Hold. Without the Hold, you can't have Gestalt. So they also explored the nature of the conscious experience. However, Gestalt psychologists thought that the human consciousness could not be meaningful broken down into raw elements as the structuralism tried to do, right? So the Gestalt is a whole. They didn't break it down like the structuralism, because structuralism depends on the structure, right? So we have structure of some of the house. Gestalt is just the whole house, right? And the perception has meaning only when it seems as a whole rather than a simple collection of elements, right? So the structuralism is the elements of the conscious experience, and the Gestalt psychology is the whole of the conscious experience, right? So the important figure in Gestalt psychology was Max Weber. I'm sorry if I pronounce his name wrong. So he said that the whole is different from the sum of the parts. Like I said, the whole is very important in Gestalt psychology. Remember, Gestalt is the whole. Alright, so now we move on to functionalism. Function. Just think about function, like, you know, the way how things function. Like if you go to a function, they have different orders of things, right? That is the now this one is the theory that focus on the function of the human mind, right? So what useful function does the consciousness serve that helps us serve as a species? Without humans, the world won't function well because the animals would die. They won't have food to eat, you know. Important figures in functionalism in this theory is William James, Herman Ebbinghaus, and Mary Wigton Claxnix. I think that's her. All right. So this theory was influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution, where physical characteristics involved in the species because it serves a purpose. And just like this, we serve a purpose on this earth, and that is what functionalism is all about. Similarly, James believed that the same could have been done about the characteristics of the human mind. So without Gestalt psychology, structuralism, they wanted to know what's going on in our mind and the way how our mind functions. So that is what functionalism is. So it's the thinking, feeling, learning, remembering, and other mental processes exist only because they help us survive as a species, right? The function of the mind is not its raw element, but the subject matter of the psychology that the functionalist, right? So when you think about functionalism, you just want to think about the way how the mind function and the way how we think, you know, that's the function of our mind. So now we move on to the behaviorism, right? When you think about behaviorism, behavior, the way how we behave, right? This theory was also influenced by Darwin's theory. However, instead of looking at the adaptation of the function of the consciousness, they believe that it was not possible to study conscious experience, right? Scientifically, my bad. They believe that we had to study physically, the way how we move, the way how we talk, the way how we hear. That is the behaviorism, right? Behaviorism studied the adaptive value of learning experiences, the way how we learn, the way how, you know. And then the important figure in behaviorism was Ivan Pavlov, John B. Washington, Margaret Floyd Washburn, and B.F. Skinner. Pablo identified as a simple form of learning or conditioning, in which inherent reflex come to be triggered by a stimulus that has nothing to do with reflex, but has to do with the way how the brain works, right? He had shown that the event inherited reflexes that could be influenced dramatically by learning experience. So behaviorism is just the way how we learn. Behaviorism said that Darwin's theory, he stated that they couldn't study conscious experience scientifically, so he wanted to study it using conditioning, right? So now we move on to the psychotherapy, right? Psychotherapy, think about therapy, right? That's the nature of the unconscious mind, right? This focus on the mental processes that we are unaware of, the unconscious mind, right? We're unconscious of several things. We're unconscious of what is going on in our head. Yes, we know we're conscious about that. I am conscious that I am explaining to you what psychotherapy is, but there are several things that I'm not conscious of, right? So the important figure in this was Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that the roots of psychological problems, he tried to threaten where the innate motive, particularly sexual and aggressive one, that reside in an unconscious part of the mind. Freud, everything that Freud think about is he believed everything is sexual, right? So when you think of the rest, they believe that we can focus on several other things, but he believes that everything that we focus on, everything that happens in our unconscious mind is because of sexual thoughts, or you know. And then these unconscious motives are and the conflict that surround them influence us, and we thought that we knew they existed, but he thinks that whatever we do is sexual. So now we move on to the modern psychology, right? So those, we have the Gestalt Psychology, Functionalism, and those other ones, those were different. These one are the modern psychology. We have the cognitive psychology, social learning theory, and humanistic psychology. We're going to start off with the cognitive psychology. So cognitive psychology is the viewpoint of psychology that emphasizes the importance of cognitive processes such as perception, memory, and thinking. So when you think about cognitive, you think about processes such as perception, memory, and thinking. You think about several ways how we memorize, how we think, and stuff like that. That is cognitive psychology. That is a modern version of functionalism. So when you think cognitive, you think about functionalism, the modern version of functionalism. It is also strongly influenced by Gestalt Psychology, right? Remember, Gestalt Psychology also refers to Structuralism, right? In many ways, cognitive psychology is the heart of modern psychology. So when we think about the heart of the older psychology, we think about structuralism and Gestalt psychology. But in the modern, the heart of psychology is cognitive psychology. Now we move on to the social learning theories, right? So the social learning theories, this is a viewpoint that integrates the study of behavior with the study of cognition, right? Important figure is Albert Barana. Yeah. This is a viewpoint that states that the most important aspect of our behaviors are learning from other persons in society. So when you learn from other people, that is what relates to social learning theory, right? We learn to be who we are from our families and friends, right? Because the way we grow up, the people we grew up around, we want to be like them. When we think about social learning theories, we think about role models, right? They also Barana also states that the social learning theory viewpoint integrates aspect of behavior is an integrate aspect of behaviorism, and the cognitive perspective continue to be important theoretical perspective today, right? So when you think about social learning theories, you think about behaviorism. You think about the way how you learn from other people. They do things, you believe that you can do that way. That is out. You also influence. Remember, the goal of psychology is to influence, right? So now we move on to our last modern psychology, right? Humanistic psychology. The relation of psychoanalysis. This relates to the unconscious mind. Remember, the unconscious, what you're not conscious of right now, right? Human determines that their own facts through the conscious decision they make. However, the unconscious mind often defeats our efforts to make good conscious decision, right? When we think about our conscious mind, we know what's going on around us. But when we think about our unconscious mind, we think about what is going on in my head, what is going on that I'm not seeing, right? And that kind of defeats what I want to think about and what I would want to focus on, right? Our views of what we are like, our self-concept, is the key element of conscious decision making. However, society makes it difficult to have an accurate self-concept, right? Important figure in this is Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, and Viktor Frankl. Although psychoanalysis and the humanistic view of unconscious mind is very different, they both see it is the most important cause of human problems, right? So it is a humanistic psychology see that the unconscious mind is one of the most important cause of human problems. So now we're going to move on to another set, which is the psychometrics and the neuroscience perspective, right? Psychometric is a perspective in psychology founded by Alfred Binet that focuses on the measurement of mental function. So since this is just the introduction of psychology, we're not going deep into psychometrics. But what you need to know about psychometrics is that it was founded by Albert Bennett and it's focusing on the measurement of mental function. Now the neuroscience perspective views in psychology that focuses on the nervous system in explaining the behaviorism and mental processes. So my colleagues, they're going to explain more deeper into psychometrics and neuroscience perspective, right, of psychology. So the basics versus applied psychology. Also, we're not going deep into basics and applied psychology because my other colleagues, they're going to more stress on that. So what is the basics of modern psychology, right? So we're going to do our verses right now. What you guys need to remember about psychology is that the most important division in psychology are not the theoretical, but are based on the kind of psychologist things they do, right? And the contemporary psychologists can be roughly divided into two broad groups: those who study the basic topics, which is basic psychology, and those who work with applied areas of psychology. So we're going to list those basic psychology and then the applied psychology, right? So now we're going to move on with the basic psychology firstly, right? So different roots of basic psychology, different areas of the modern psychology are the biological psychology, sensation and perception, learning and memory, cognitive psychologists, cognitive and cognitive psychologists, the developmental psychology, motivation and emotion psychology, personality, social psychology, and the socioculture psychology, right? Then we move on. I'm not since we're just introducing you guys to psychology, we're not going deep into what these are, but my fellow colleagues will go in several areas of the modern psychology. So now we move on to applied psychology. So applied psychology, we have 5 main areas of the applied psychology. We have clinical psychology, counseling psychology, education and school psychology, industrial and organizational psychology, and health psychology. So what you guys learned today is just the introduction to psychology. Remember, psychology is the behavior of the science of behaviors of the mental processes, right? So if there is any question, I want you guys to leave it in the comments, and thank you guys for watching this video. See you guys in our next video.